What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So Trump has declared economic war on Canada, and it's working. That's right. In a video that I never expected to make, our biggest trading partner was just at the center of a massive controversy, all because of a brand new tax that was about to hit the United States today, which Trump called a direct and blatant attack on our country. Like, without exaggeration, this new tax has the potential to start another trade war, cost American companies billions of dollars, and lead to brand new tariffs that make everything more expensive for you and me. Not to mention, most people have no idea what's currently taking place. That's why we got to discuss exactly what just happened, what this means for everybody watching, and how you could best prepare going forward. Because like it or not, this is just the very beginning. Although before we start, if you appreciate breaking news videos like this, where we just cover the facts regardless of what side you're on, it would mean the world to me if you tax the like button or subscribed if you haven't done that already. Doing that seriously helps with the channel more than you could imagine, and as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of a baby Canadian goose. So thanks so much, and also a big thank you to Incogni for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so to bring you up to speed, let's discuss where all of this begins. Canada. Now, even though it seems like China's received most of the spotlight over the last year, behind the scenes, Canada has actually become America's largest trading partner, with over $761 billion worth of goods exchanged in 2024. This means that every single day, $3.6 billion worth of goods crosses our borders, with oil, natural gas, aluminum, and steel making up a significant portion of that. But it doesn't stop there. For over 150 years, Canada's been one of America's closest allies and trading partners. We share the world's longest undefended borders. We fought together throughout world wars, and our economies, for the most part, have been completely intertwined, as in what happens to the United States affects Canada, and vice versa. Like, Canada's become so commingled with our own economy that in 1965, an automotive trade agreement was signed to create one of the biggest free trade zones on the planet, meaning auto parts could freely travel from the US to Canada to Mexico without much opposition. This is also why Canada's become the largest consumer of American goods and services over the last few decades. So if there's one country the US cannot afford to alienate, it's Canada. That's why when something like a new tax comes up, initiated from Canada, it's a big deal that could equally impact both economies. So here's exactly what's happening. All of this comes down to what's called the Digital Services Tax. See, back in 2020, Canada realized that giant digital corporations like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Netflix were making a ton of money off Canadian users while paying relatively little tax back to Canada. After all, in their mind, Canadians browse American websites, they click on ads, and they stream shows. So Canada wants a portion of those proceeds. Except there's a problem. Most multi-billion or trillion-dollar companies incorporate themselves in a place like Ireland, which has a corporate tax rate of just 12.5%. So Canada came up with a solution. Instead of those American company profits being distributed out of the country, Canada would implement what's called a 3% digital service tax. The plan was that this would only apply to companies making over 750 million euros a year and have at least 20 million worth of Canadian digital revenue. So the small companies are off the hook. But the big American tech giants fall right into this category, and even Canada's own government estimated that around 90% of the money collected from the tax will come from US-based companies. However, even though these taxes were initially proposed in 2020, Canada postponed their implementation while trying to work out an international solution through the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which aimed to create one set of global tax rules that would apply around the world. Seems normal, right? Well, month after month, year after year, that initiative kept getting pushed back and delayed. So eventually, Canada got fed up and decided to move forward without the rest of the world. And in 2024, they passed their Digital Services Tax, which made these tax payments retroactively owed all the way back to 2022. This meant that big tech companies could suddenly owe billions of dollars going back for the last 3 years, with a payment due date of June 30th, 2025. Essentially, everyone knew that this tax was coming, but there was a lot of uncertainty about whether or not Canada would actually go through with it while being in the middle of a trade negotiation. Although, as we recently found out, this is where everything suddenly went very, very wrong. After months of trade negotiations, Trump abruptly canceled all trade talks with Canada over their new digital services tax, saying that based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. On top of that, Trump also said that economically, we have such power over Canada. We'd rather not use it. It's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. So if you're curious exactly what this tariff could be and what this means for you, You're gonna want to hear this. Although before we go into that, just like governments are going after big tech with taxes like Canada's DST, the reality is our own information is already being tracked and traded. Like, most people have no idea just how much of their personal information is floating around on the internet in the hands of third parties, spammers, and other people who might want to target you. Like, just try Googling yourself. Full name, city, and state. You'll be shocked to see just how much of your information's out there already. Now, even though this seems impossible to stop, you do have a right to protect your privacy and request the data brokers remove the information they have about you. And even though this seems impossible to do yourself, our sponsor, Incogni, is there to help. They could do all the dirty work for you by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf, requesting your personal data be removed, and dealing with any objections that websites or data brokers might have. And since data brokers continue collecting your information even after they've removed it, Incogni makes sure your information stays off the market by conducting repeated removal requests. All you have to do is create an account, grant them the right to work for you, and then sit back while they keep you updated every step of the way. Even better, their unlimited plan now allows you to submit individual links for removal. Simply point them to where your information is being exposed and then let their privacy experts handle the rest. Plus, you could submit as many links as you want, making it essential for anyone who wants to protect their sensitive information and get their private data taken down. Not to mention, it's also available risk-free for 30 days, so anyone's able to try it out, give it a shot, and then get a full refund if you're not 100% satisfied. So if you're interested in having your personal data taken down, check out incogni.com/Graham and use the code Graham at checkout for 60% off an annual plan. The link is also down below in the description to get started today. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the video. All right, so in terms of where we currently stand, it's important to keep in mind that we already have quite a few US-Canadian tariffs. For example, there's currently a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods, as well as auto parts and vehicles, a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and a 10% tariff on energy, which is currently paused indefinitely. And when you really get down to it, these tariffs really aren't anything new. For instance, in 2017, the United States slapped Canada with tariffs on lumber. In 2018, we saw the same 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And in 2019, those tariffs were lifted after back and forth negotiations. Point being, tariffs are not this futuristic thing that's exclusive to 2025. They've been going on for quite some time, except now they tend to be the focal point of what we hear about in the news. The same also applies to a digital service tax. Most people have no idea that France enacted a 3% tax in 2019. The United Kingdom launched a 2% tax, and over a dozen other locations also followed suit. So Canada's proposal is not a revolutionary concept, and it's not even something that only Trump had an issue with. In fact, Biden's team was actively working to get this postponed or eliminated entirely in favor of a global resolution. So in terms of what's happening today, here's what you came for. First of all, when it comes to tariffs, or really any negotiation, Trump said it himself. We could do whatever we want. This means there's no hard deadlines, there's no set strategy to negotiate, and if matters need to escalate for the sake of getting a deal done, even if it's done very publicly without hesitation, so be it. That's why when recently asked about the July 9th tariff deadline for global tariffs, Trump said that we could extend it, we could make it shorter, effectively allowing whatever he wants to happen. I say this because even though he openly walks away from tariff negotiations or throws out tariff numbers, it doesn't mean those tariffs will actually happen. It doesn't mean that they will stay in effect. And it doesn't mean that they will even be enforced. Like, by now it seems like the general consensus is that he'll throw out tariff numbers, he'll use it as a negotiation, he'll pause and postpone if the deadline isn't reached, and then he'll work out a resolution before things break. In fact, when it comes to investing, all of this feeds into what's called the taco strategy. Okay, I know this is not going to be taken too seriously, but some investors have made a ton of money following the acronym Trump always chickens out. And if that sounds confusing, it's investing in the philosophy that Trump tends to make some intense threats against trading partners and then pulls back on his position once confronted with an adverse reaction from within the market. Now, on the one hand, it's said that it's easy to underestimate the amount of harm that this negotiation style has done, not just to other countries, but also to the United States. Although on the other hand, this is a textbook strategy from his book, The Art of the Deal, which starts with an extreme ask using leverage and urgency while pressure is applied publicly without losing control of the narrative. All of which is currently playing out in real time. Plus, if you invested based off this philosophy, you would have made a ton of money buying the dips throughout March and April. And whether or not this is Trump chickening out or really just negotiating the art of the deal is really up to you to decide. Either way. But the point still remains. Overall, the market does not believe that tariffs are going to have a long-standing impact. Even though the US dollar is down compared to other currencies, investors are still bullish. And it doesn't appear as though Trump would risk damaging the entire economy permanently. But then again, I could be totally wrong. Now, in terms of my own thoughts, I've said this before a few months ago, but it's worth repeating because so far, this has done nothing but come true. Trump starts by threatening tariffs by a certain date, the market goes down, but eventually starts to recover. On the days tariffs go into effect, the market plunges, but 24 to 48 hours later, an agreement is reached that gives an extension or exclusion on past tariffs, the market goes back up, and then the process repeats itself when tariffs go back into effect until once again, another agreement is reached. In this case, from Canada's perspective, they want tax fairness, where big tech is enabled to profit from Canadian users without paying a tax. But from the United States perspective, they see this as a direct tax on American companies, especially since most Canadian companies wouldn't fall under this category. But big picture, it's become clear that Trump walking out is purely a negotiation strategy. And wouldn't you know it, the breaking news you've all been waiting for, it's working. That's right, just hours before the digital service tax was supposed to be going into effect, Canada completely rescinded it in anticipation of a mutually beneficial comprehensive trade arrangement with the United States. Or in other words, they're pausing it again after saying they weren't going to do that a few weeks ago. However, even though this is good news for the United States and partly why big tech is up today, it's important to mention that the digital service taxes are not off the table entirely and are still subject to ongoing negotiations that are going to happen over the next few months. Not to mention, other countries throughout the European Union have still floated the idea of implementing their own taxes. So rest assured, this will all be incorporated into future trade deals. That's why I believe that almost everything we publicly see is just for show. And our upcoming tariff deadline of July 9th will turn into another negotiation. Long term, however, I do believe that there will be a point where a digital services tax will be enacted globally, but as of right now, this has just gotten delayed after delayed, and it's unclear when eventually this might happen. This is why I just keep buying the dips, I keep investing as usual, and if the market goes down, great, it's a way to buy in even cheaper. And if it goes up, then that's great too. Either way, it's a win-win. A perfect example of this is that stocks have just hit yet another brand new all-time high. Overall, investors are pretty optimistic for trade agreements, and the growing consensus is that all of this is pretty much self-inflicted. So if we need to walk back on certain items, there's really nothing stopping the US from doing so. Essentially, the lesson here is just not to get scared off by headlines, and just know that long term, everything should eventually just work itself out. On top of that, there's also talks today about Jerome Powell soon being replaced, while being accused of lying to Congress over a $2.5 billion Palace of Versailles renovation. And if we get another Fed chair like Scott Bessent, then Trump could also get his way with lower interest rates, which, yeah, could completely send the market higher again on the basis of a lot more free money. So we'll have to keep an eye on this, and if you subscribe, I promise I'll keep you up to date. Although keep in mind, I am just a random dude on YouTube making videos in a half-converted garage, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. So if I've left anything out or I missed anything, please let me know down below in the comments, and I will do my best to read and reply to as many of you as I can. So thanks so much. As always, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and until next time.